So your feeding window in a day is how many hours?
About 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah.
So it started with the exercise, though, and then from the exercise it went to the diet,
Yeah.
and from the diet it went to a certain window of eating, now to a more restricted. But I got to ask, during that few hours where it's okay to eat,
Right.
is it just like a lion feasting on a deer? What's going on there? Thank you for being here today. I'm with Ricardo, and in this Ask Me Anything series, I'm asking people to come on and answer some questions about a variety of areas. And today I've asked you to be here because I want your opinion about several things that have to do with personal life. So, Rick, how do I find meaning or purpose in life?
There's a lot to unpack with that question, but I think there's a few ways. There's a guy I read a bio on. His name's Scott Harrison. He was living the dream in his early 20s. He was living in New York in a penthouse, and he was actually a club promoter, and he was working for MTV, VH1, making all this kind of money. And you on the outside looking in, you would think he's living this ideal life. But then he started to feel really empty. Even though he was doing all these things, there was no purpose to his life outside of club promoting and living this lavish lifestyle. And one day he decided to quit. And he worked with a company called Mercy Ships, which he traveled with them for 2 years, which is like a floating hospital. And they would go to these third world countries. And he got inspired after going and seeing all of these people that are suffering because they didn't have any access to clean water. And so he came back and he started the foundation Charity Water, which his first few investors were Mark Zuckerberg and all these tech giants that invested. And since then, he's raised $200 million, and all of that money has gone to building wells. And you ask him now, what is your meaning and purpose in life? He found that through so it's about that journey of like bettering not only who you are, but what you're doing with your life.
Right.
And that was just an incredible story of finding meaning. We search for meaning in a lot of empty things. And I think we can find a lot of meaning and purpose in helping other people.
What would you do? What kind of suggestion would you give to somebody in your age group? And maybe they're struggling with a lot of issues. They don't know where they're going. They don't have a plan or purpose for their life. They're just floundering. Is there any suggestion you might have that might help them get on track?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think life is a continual journey, especially when you're young and in your 20s. You're still trying to figure out yourself. When you look at things in your life and you say, I want to be in shape. I want to be successful. I want to do all these things. I want to have a family. Any choice that you make should align with those choices or with those goals.
Right.
So if you understand, like, okay, I want to lose weight and I want to be happier, am I going to go to the drive-thru and eat a Big Mac? No, because that doesn't align with what my goals are. So that's a really good way, because if you're trying to wander through life and be like, oh, I just, I want to stop doing bad things for myself, but you don't have really an end goal, you're just wandering. So having those goals in mind and that end result and that finish line is going to help you cut those things out.
Right. No one wants discipline. There's an old expression.
Yeah, it's a gross word.
Water flows in the path of least resistance.
Right.
And the reason we don't do what we should is because it's just easier. But for you, how do you overcome that?
I think it's a natural human instinct to always go to the path of least resistance. And if anything, that's what exercise and even just diet has taught me, is that, we're not going to do what's easy today, because it's always easier to sleep in. It's always easier to eat, go into the drive-thru and eat something bad for you. But training your mind to go against the grain and be disciplined, you're going to live a much happier, fulfilling life. You're going to just be happier, and your body's going to thank you for that as well.
Do you think that once you start, that one act of discipline helps with the other acts?
Absolutely. Because I think where a lot of people, they make the mistake of going from one end of the spectrum to another because they want to see the immediate results and they see what the example is. But you have to go through all those individual steps in bettering yourself. But as long as you're taking a step in the right direction towards your ultimate goal, then you're doing it, and it doesn't matter at what pace you're going. Like you're making progress, and sometimes you'll fall short, sometimes you'll take a step back, but always moving forward should always be the goal.
Where do you think a church community fits into this whole thing? How could a church help someone like that find their discipline or help them through their struggle?
I think, a church community is really just it's a lot of accountability. And, looking at the people around you and whoever's speaking, they're always like, you do a great job of, promoting very healthy things for your life. So listening to what the pastor is saying in a practical way, like, here's how you can be the best version of you. And this is how you can live the way Jesus taught you how to live and be the best example of that and strive for that,
How do I keep old friends that may not be helping me with that? Well, how do I deal with that?
My youth pastor used to say, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. And so who you surround yourself with is so important. And if you're surrounding yourself with people that are negative and constantly dragging you down and trying to pull you down to where they are, it can be problematic, And so surrounding yourself with people that are pushing themselves and like-minded like you are, that accountability and that it's just going to rub off on you. And I think that's so important because there's always going to be people constantly say like, why are you getting up so early? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And that's an insecurity that they have in themselves. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
And they're going to try to drag you down to bring you down to their level because misery loves company. But identifying their role in your life, I think, is really important. Encourage them, but don't let them bring you down.
What about people who criticize you for doing the right thing or doing the discipline thing? How do you deal with that kind of criticism? How does it make you feel?
Turn it around. Just say, use it as motivation because there will always be people that hate on you for doing things, trying to better yourself. But if you can turn that around and reframe it in your mind as motivation, my favorite thing is when somebody tells me I can't do something. That is my favorite thing because once they tell me that, it's like, I'm going to show you, pal.
Agreed. So with that kind of attitude, how does the attitude of Christ fit in this whole thing while you're doing that?
I think the attitude of Christ is something that's really humbling and grounding. And it's something, as a person that I'm trying to better myself, I start to focus on things that, I want a bigger house or I want a better car. And when I get grounded in Christ and understand the way that Jesus taught us how to live, it had nothing to do with that. And we actually had a conversation with Leighton this morning, and she was asking why we give money to other people. We have a couple of sponsor kids that we sponsor through Compassion, and we just told her like, we have everything that we need. We're very blessed, and we want to help people, and just instilling that into her life and understanding like these are the things that are important. We are so blessed with where we are, and we want to help people. And so just keeping that that grounded nature of like identifying we always want more, but understanding like we have everything that we need and being really happy with what we have and identifying that we are very blessed and we should be helping other people.
So if I were to ask you this last question, how do I become more like Christ? What discipline, if there's any, would be involved in that?
I think there's a lot of disciplines. I mean, Jesus lived an incredible life. And I think it's grounded in where's your focus. If your focus is constantly inward, there's going to be some problems. You need to focus outward as well. You need to take care of yourself. Absolutely. It's something that's really important because you can't do what you need to do if you're not healthy, but you also need to have a focus on the outward and helping the people that are around you.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. So I wanted to bring a Big Mac bag out here today. Just thought that would be inappropriate. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for also tuning in. Today is the second in the AMA series, or Ask Me Anything. Last week we talked about beliefs and how that we are a community church. We're not Baptist or Methodist or whatever. We don't have all these doctrines that we have to ascribe to. But, and really, if you begin to put all the list of all the different denominations, you'd see the reason they're different is because they disagree on so many different topics. We simply choose not to have that kind of disagreement and say, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of the community. We think there's something bigger that draws us together. And we're okay with not everyone believing exactly the specific beliefs. But today, we shift this a little more personal. And you saw that even with the video with Ricardo. Personal questions. And the first question that you've asked for us, and we're trying to answer your questions, and you'll judge how well we did that today by the end. A few questions. Here's the first question. How do we find purpose in our life? How do I find purpose in my life? How do I find out what God created me to do? Really, in philosophy or philosophical theology, it's called the question of ontological existence. You go, what does that mean? It really means, why am I here? What am I about? What's my purpose? I was created for something to make a difference somehow. See, we struggle with who we are, what we're supposed to do, but sometimes part of that struggle is because of the expectation of others. We have to deal with what's been called the please disease. Are you familiar with that? It's simply the people that just says, I want to please everyone. I can't say no, and sometimes it gets very frustrating because you're just saying yes to everything, and sometimes you say please to all your children's whims. When you do that, you're not raising children, you're raising tyrants. So sometimes you have to learn to say no to kids, and it's part of life. But the please disease is epidemic. We spend all our life trying to please others. We're consumed with saying yes rather than no. I struggle with my purpose when the expectation of others drives my life. And I will let you know, part of that's true for all of us. You may not have the please disease, but you have a little bit of it. You say, Pastor, you have some of it? I do. But do I try to get over it? The best I can. I would love to please everyone all the time. It's just not possible. For example, people say, oh, we want you to preach every week of your life. My wife is not happy with that because sometimes she wants me to go off and have vacation with her. So when that happens, I go, well, someone's not going to win here. And I will tell you, when it's between you and her, she's going to win every time. Fair enough? Because I have to live with her 24/7. I only have to live with you just occasionally. But sometimes we get caught in this please because it's the struggle. I want to be everything for everyone, and that's a problem. I can lose my focus to live like Christ when I'm trying to please everyone. So what's my purpose? To live like Jesus would in my story. How do we find our purpose? Purpose is found when we choose to do difficult things that bring us toward our ideal future self, which we used to use this word Christ-likeness. It's still a good word. I mean, sometimes it's what we need to do. Seth Godin, one of the marketing geniuses, I love, I get a little email every day, a little text or whatever that he gives a little thought about marketing. And this is one recently, and this is what it says. This one simple trick makes everything faster and easier. Here it is, tested, effective, and worthwhile. Here's the trick. Stop chasing shortcuts. Personal finance, weight loss, muscle building. Can you imagine that's a shortcut? There is no shortcut. It takes time. It takes a while. Careers, beating traffic. Yeah, there's no shortcuts. Relationships, it's the long way around. Education, there's no shortcuts. Everything that matters to someone often comes with heavily promoted shortcuts as an alternative. Fast, risk-free, effortless secrets that magically work, often at someone else's expense. And I love this last statement. If you can't afford the time and effort to do it right, you probably can't afford the time and effort to do it 2 or 3 times. Because the first time the shortcut isn't going to work, you're going to have to do it the long way as well. See, it's not about doing the easy thing. It's a challenge for us to do the better thing that makes us better people and people around us. So let me share with you some thoughts from Matthew 16 first. Matthew 16, verse 13, Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist. Some say Elijah. Some say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And Jesus said, but what about you? Who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ or the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Wow, what a statement. But here's where I want to add one more question to that. Who do people say you are? I bet they're not saying you're the prophet or the Messiah. Maybe they have other words. Like what? Well, some descriptions, he's just so full of himself, or she's full of herself. Or maybe a description, they're just mean. You ever describe someone, they're just mean or judgmental? or tough, or they're weak, or they're just very opinionated. But listen carefully, no matter what people say about you or me, it does not determine who we are. Who am I? What's my purpose? I want to tell you who I am. And I'll tell you my middle name you probably don't know. My name is Larry Mark Baucom. Some of you say, I've never knew your middle name was Mark. Well, it is. I'm a husband, a father of 3, grandfather of 5. I'm a son, a brother, a pastor, scholar, a friend, a little bit of an entrepreneur. See, I am confident. But you know my confidence? Sometimes is seen negatively by others. They say, oh, he's not confident, he's arrogant. I'm joyful. Sometimes that annoys people when you're just really happy. Why? Because, oh, it's something, he's hiding something. No one can be that joyful all the time. I don't take myself too seriously. You shouldn't either. What do you mean? We're just human. I mean, you know, everybody makes mistakes. I understand that. I am sometimes perceived as insincere when I don't take everybody as seriously as they think they should. But what's my purpose? What is my purpose? To live my life helping people discover who God is. I think we've been so damaged by this concept. I want you to know I think it's my purpose to help us understand who He is in a better way. And secondly, to live my life helping others discover their best self and how they can be connected with God. I'm like Paul. I want to help you discover a more excellent way, as 1 Corinthians 13 talks about. And the greatest of these is love. Let me lead to another question that you ask. How do I stop living in the past and worrying about the future? Well, it's good to understand that there's value in the past, right? Remember the good old days? Remember the good old days we met in the school for 9 years? We had to set up the equipment, tear it down every week. Remember those good old days? It was a lot of work. I didn't think it was that good. But do you remember what about those kinds of past thoughts? To live in the past is to miss the present moments of life. But to ignore the past is damaging as well. To get through the past or let go of some past damage requires acceptance and some forgiveness. The past is part of our story, and where we end up changes how we view what has happened to us. I can look back on my past and I will be honest and say, I am so grateful to be where I am today that I'm glad I went through everything I went through. But then my brain plays another track. What if I'd gone through a lot less, would I be farther down the road? We don't know. But what we do know is that the past can be overcome, but it also is part of who we are. We have to embrace it, but not let it hold us back. We realize that we can continue to change. We can continue to grow. We can continue to be transformed by the love of God. Our past becomes an important part of the development of our story. It's okay. You know, how do I stop living in the past? You shouldn't live there, but you should understand it has value to you. So how do I stop worrying about the future? Concern for the future is inevitable. I mean, that's what makes us human. Planning for tomorrow, the other animals don't do a lot of planning, but we as human beings, we plan. What do you mean? Well, early on, you didn't have refrigeration. So if you had something that was a meat that was killed, you wanted to preserve it for another day. You tried to find something cold, or you shared it with the whole tribe. Those are things about planning for the future. It's what makes us human. Worry is an emotional energy and expense over uncertainty. Now, do you ever worry? Has there been anything this week about a cone of uncertainty in your life? Maybe that cone of uncertainty had all of us on pins and needles. I mean, I wasn't worried about it. Yes, you were. Well, not a lot. Okay, fair enough. I mean, we don't know. The experts didn't know where the hurricane's going. I love the spaghetti model. I saw it this morning because I like to track it just like you do. And I'm watching it, and I see the spaghetti model. Everything's going up the East Coast. All the spaghetti balls except one. One goes straight over to Tampa and turns around, comes right through Sarasota, heads back over. I go, who did that? It was my model. No, But if I had one, I'd do that just to make everybody just psych. Think about it. All the science, all the data, all the information we have, and we don't know for sure, but we want to. Today, when we look to the future, can I suggest relax? Be confident. Do what you can today. Today in the present, let's aim to be the best version of who we can be today and tomorrow. Don't forget, aim high, but live. I love to talk about the long and short game of life and ask what game you're playing. See, the future is the long game. What's going to happen 10 years down the road, 15 years, 20 years? And some people, the short game is the present. And really, what game are you playing? The present is the short game. To live, if you live totally for the long game or for the future, you might miss the joy of living today. But if you live totally for today, you might never develop into the person that you could become. You see the tension? I want to suggest this word. You won't like it. Balance. What does that mean? Well, in a diet, I don't like it either. I mean, balance. It's like a retirement plan. For those of you financial counselors, we have several. You can spend all your money in the present and have no money put away for the future. That's short-sighted. That's the short game. Or the other extreme is you can save all your money. You can live like a pauper today, a minimalist, and just get by, and someday you have a fully funded retirement. So, you know, that's great unless you die young. Then you say, well, I saved all of the money that I have, everything to live someday. Someday I'm going to live. You ever hear people talk about that? Someday. When I was in seminary in Kansas City, I had a professor, his name was Morris Weigelt. He stood before us seminary guys because one of the things that happens when you go to school for multiple years, you want to get through. And sometimes you shelf your life and your whole world becomes academics. I've seen pastors, some guys studying to be pastors, not go to church during that time because they're so busy studying for ministry, they just don't have time for everything. And this guy, Morris Weigelt, he stood up, and we were young guys. I was in my early 20s. He said, guys, let me tell you, I went to Princeton, graduated with honors, had everything I could be, and Princeton is a pretty good place to get your PhD. He said, about my third year in, and I was just putting everything aside, all about school. My wife contracted cancer and died before I finished my program. He said, guys, I want to tell you, he just got a tear in his eye. He said, live your life while you're here. Don't put it on the side. Don't forget your spouse. Don't forget your life. Even if you have to stay here another year, it's better to live. Just don't push it so hard. Boy, I need to hear that. I extended my time there because I wanted to live. I played a lot of softball, sang in a choir, taught small groups, went to church. I had a great life. And school was always a blessing during that time. I wish I'd paid a little more attention to Florida State. That's a different story. But it's about taking responsibility for balance, taking responsibility for my life, making personal choices today that affect tomorrow. So the next question from a high school senior. How do I keep myself from falling into temptations, Pastor, like drugs or cheating at school, and help others do the right thing as well? See, before you can know what to do, even as a student in school, you have to think about what you want to be. Imagine yourself in the future. What do you look like? How do you talk? How do you act in tough situations? You kind of almost have to put in your mind a circumstance to where you could cheat. And then in your mind, you go, but I'm not going to go there. See how you treat people. What values do you have? And I love this statement. Imagine Jesus living in your story with you. And develop a plan of how you're going to act. Take one step at a time. And this is some other things I'd suggest. Number one, as a high school student, it works also for the rest of us. Number one, tell the truth. Be honest. I talked to a lady last night after the Saturday night crowd She's 99, she'll be 100. I've got a save the date card in my house for her 100th birthday party. And as she was walking out, she said, I want you to know in my book of life that I'm saving to pass on, one of the things that's in there is to pass on to my kids is tell the truth. She thinks that's important, so do I. Don't cheat, because you're really just cheating yourself. Be honest with yourself. When you fail, at least admit it to yourself. Don't blame others, accept the responsibility. But when you do, also forgive yourself. Forgive others. Refocus. Make better choices. Be willing to begin again, because just because I blew it yesterday doesn't mean I'm a failure and have to blow it the rest of my life. It's a lot of things for a high school senior, but I could use those myself. Another question. These are tougher questions. There's actually two of them that are similar, and then I'm going to make them into a short question so that easier. But here's the question that you gave me. What can someone do to be able to share and show the love of and likeness of Christ when your life has been nothing but troubles, heartache, and illness, yet you have love, but it's hard to show it because of the wickedness of the world? Another question, similar. How do you not get discouraged from all the mess out there? Marriages falling apart, people making bad choices, ugliness of life. Those are two questions. Let me sum them up into one. The question I hear is, what can I do to share the love of Christ when I am damaged by life? What can I do to share love when I'm wounded and I'm hurting? There's a book written by a Catholic priest, Henry Nouwen, Nouwen, called Wounded Healer. He states that people often get the best help not by these clever insights we have when we're with them, but by standing with them in their wounded state and caring for them. People who are wounded and are so focused on themselves really don't have much to give back. But if they can go to the place where they can stand by someone or just be with someone who's hurting similarly, they can truly make a difference. A friend of mine is an addict. He understands addicts better than I do by far. And he can help addicts much better than I can. I've lost 2 brothers. When someone loses your siblings, I understand the heartache that you go through. But in other areas of loss, maybe I've not walked with you or I've not experienced those, I still can walk alongside you and just be there. I call it the ministry of presence. Not talking. That's tough, isn't it? Just being there. Regardless, how do I live my life? I love this quote from a retired Episcopal bishop. Listen to what he says. God is the source of life who is worshiped when we live fully. Think about that. God is the source of life who is worshiped when we live fully. Live, love, laugh, experience the joy of life, because as you do, you're honoring the one who gives you life. God is the source of love who is worshiped when we love wastefully. And I go back to the story of the lost son. How he comes home and the father says, bring the robe, put a ring on his finger, kill the fatted calf. It's time to have a party. It's just this extravagant love, portraying the extravagant love that the Father has for us. Love expecting nothing in return. So God is the source of life, live fully. God is the source of love extravagantly. God is the ground of being, who is worshiped when we have the courage to be. What does that mean? We have the courage to be more, or to become more. See, the fullness of his life, the life of Jesus, reveals the source of life, and the being of his life reveals the ground of all being. So what is my purpose in life? Live fully, love wastefully, and to be the best version of me that I can be with the help of God. Can I pray for you? Thank you, Father, for your love and grace. There's some here today, they're looking for their purpose. My prayer is they find it as they live fully, love wastefully, and become the best version that they can be. Our purpose is found in our connection with you. Father, work in our hearts and lives. May our hearts be expanded today to know more, to love more, to rejoice more. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Would you stand, please? I'm going to tell you a story in closing. As I do, remind you Anything you need to pray about today, there's someone up front who'd be delighted to pray with you. Also, there's communion at the front. If you'd like to stay for a time of communion, it'll be up front on my right-hand side. So here's a story. It's an old story, but I love it. It's about a pastor who called the home of a church family. And as the phone rang, and it was answered, and the hello was whispered, "Hello?" And the pastor said, "Who's this?" And the whisper said, "Jimmy." "How old are you, Jimmy?" 4. "Jimmy, may I please speak to your mom?" "She's busy right now." "Well, can I speak to your dad?" "Oh, he's busy too." "Are there any other adults at your home?" "Well, the police." "Well, can I please speak to one of the officers?" "No." "Why not?" "They're busy." "Are there any other adults there?" "Yes." "Who?" "Firemen." "What are the firemen doing? Can I speak to one of them?" "They're busy." "Well, Jimmy, what are all these people busy doing?" He said, "Looking." He said, "Looking for what?" "For me." So here's my question. What are you looking to discover in your life? Whom, when you find them, will give you the purpose and the love and the grace you need? I would suggest his name is Jesus. He loves you today. So do I. God bless. Thanks for coming today.